You know, right here at the Harper Center in the Creighton University at the Hickson Lead Auditorium. It's an incredible theater facility. I'm so glad and privileged to be here. This show is being brought to you by the Creighton University, and particularly their business school. Dean Tony Hendrickson has pulled this thing all together, and he's enabling us to collaborate. It's a very unusual private and public partnership to collaborate with the Dean's Fellows, some outstanding Creighton students that I'm privileged to work with and have been working with for weeks right here on this show, working with the content, working with the guests, the research, and the entrepreneurial business model that is woven into this platform, this digital news platform that you're taking a part of right now. So I just want to say thank you. I want the executives in the room to provide some strong support to the Creighton students. I want the Creighton students to step up and make sure that they are heard on this podcast. Thank you, Creighton University. How about it, students, right here? Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We are so pleased, and we appreciate it so much again. Now, we're entering here our 19th or 20th show that's been taped this particular year. These two gentlemen I'm going to introduce you to are outstanding. And, you know, a lot of entrepreneurs and businesses need to get their products branded, trademarked, and distributed. It's not an easy thing to do. So we're going to be talking to two gentlemen from Erickson Cedarstrom right here in Omaha in the Regency area. Please welcome my two guests, Virgil Johnson and Andy Collins, ladies and gentlemen, from Erickson Cedarstrom. There we are. Hey, Andy. Good to see you. Hey, Virgil. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen. My pleasure to have both of you. I have great respect for your firm, and I'm not going to get into that long story, but I know about everybody at this table. And Virgil, you know we have a special relationship. We're both a couple of Norwegians.
That's exactly right.
That's right. Exactly so right. I'm very comfortable. I hope you're equally comfortable. All right, so listen, we want to talk a little bit now. Virgil, your specialty that we're discussing today is what? And just share that as a backdrop, please.
My greatest knowledge in the intellectual property area is basically licensing of software.
Licensing.
And I'll give you 2 seconds of background. I really got started with Applied Communications, which a lot of people in Omaha have heard of.
Of course.
And they started out, their base product was ATM networks.
Absolutely. Bill Fisher and ACI.
Exactly.
We know about that great success story.
And it even goes back to Jim Cody, who was the founder of the company.
Okay, all right, yeah.
And because their product got sold to the large banks, I was quite frankly kind of forced to learn a lot about licensing of software.
Yeah.
And so
it's not an easy thing. It's a touchy subject.
Yeah.
It really is, because if you're a software developer and you're asked to come in on a project, and Andy, I'm coming over to you in a minute, man. You're coming in here on a software development project, and you develop code. You develop proprietary code.
Right.
Lots of times those software developers feel they own the code.
Yep.
You know? And it's very important to them for the rest of their business to be able to access that code again and redevelop on top of that platform. Am I right about that?
It's exactly right. And one of the things that I always encourage entrepreneurs that are starting out developing a product is to make sure they own that code. And the way they do that is they have all of their employees sign a transfer of technology agreement.
Okay.
So that if they're developing on the company time, it's going to be owned by the company.
All right.
And then the second part of it is as they develop for companies, because they usually come in and say, well, we want to add this nuance or this enhancement to the software.
Of course, a feature.
And to make sure that they continue to own that code. And that becomes very important if they're going to look for financing. You know, ACI, we took public twice.
Right.
And one of the issues with the public market is they're very concerned about who owns the code.
Yes.
And they don't want it all cut up, you know.
Yeah, they don't want a murky issue there, because they think that's the secret sauce.
Exactly right.
And that's where they think their money's going.
And what happens is they obviously, it allows the company to control the code. They license the object code, but not the source code. They keep that under wraps.
I didn't know what that, the object code is what, the manifestation of the source code?
Yeah, the object code is the operating systems.
Got it, okay.
And the source code is, of course, how it's done.
Yes,
and
the seminal code, so to speak.
And if anybody is going to go in and dissect the code, they have to have the source code, or they can't figure out how to do it, or at least do it very easily.
Got it. Okay, I'm going to go over here to your cohort over here, because I know he's a bright guy. I met Andy 2 or 3 years ago at an entrepreneurial kind of a mixer type event. Tell us a little bit about your dimension here as we're talking about entrepreneurial efforts. And aren't you the intellectual property guy, the trademark guy, or what? How does it work?
Yeah. We help businesses do whatever they need to do, but specifically with regard to what's relevant for your show here, I work with clients who need to protect their intellectual property with regard to trademarks and copyrights specifically.
Yeah, yeah. And here's the tough question there. You know, how does somebody who comes up with a great name, brand name, or great service, and here we are in Nebraska, all right? So you definitely want to protect it in Nebraska. And typically you start with the local or regional and you kind of work your way out. But then all of a sudden, you know, you might want to expand, get a distribution partner, right, down in Alabama or somewhere. So now you have to apply for protection in that state, or do you apply for federal protection, you see? And how do you do all that? Is there a national trademarking protocol, and is it really worth anything?
There sure is, and yes, it is worth a lot, actually, in the right circumstances. But what you're talking about is the USPTO.
Right.
It's the United States Patent and Trademark Office.
Right, right.
Maintains what's called the principal register, and there's also a supplemental register. But the principal register, which is basically a database of trademarks that have been registered with the USPTO,
Yeah.
and therefore are protected on a nationwide basis.
Okay, and so why would I even care about applying for a state-by-state kind of patent protection if I just go ahead and get a blanket thing for the country and call it good? Does it work like that?
It can. We always recommend that any state where a business has boots on the ground, they go ahead and make those registrations with whichever Secretary of State is relevant there. And that's because those Secretary of States aren't responsible to check the National Register. They don't know what's in the USPTO records. There are also some distinctions with regard to what a business can be called. A corporate name or the name of a limited liability company might include something that you feel is protected. The Secretary of State may not know that, so they may go ahead and register something.
Is there then potential for confusion between a state and federal level? Somebody issues it, somebody refuses to? Does that happen?
Yeah, it happens. It happens. We litigated a case a few years ago. A local business here had an established trademark at the state level. Another company that was a national company came into Nebraska having federal protection for a similar mark, but not exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And that became the issue. They were asking, does our federal registration prevent you from stopping us from doing business?
Now, you know Attorney Jerry Slutsky, right? And he does the commercial development thing. Did you hear about the crew thing, right? We talk about how the word crew was, he owned it, he thought he used it here, and then there was another association nationally that said, no, we own that word crew. Tell me how that breaks down. What happens there? He insists that he's fine and he's good with that.
I don't know the specifics of that case, unfortunately, but
we have conflicting names,
and it's
the same mark. One's coming from out of state, one's been here in the state and been operating for some time.
It's not unlike what we just described with regard to confusion between the national registrations and the state registrations. And the way it breaks down quite simply is it's first in time. Whoever was using something first in time. Now that gets a little confused when it comes to regional use. Where are they using it? When did they start using it in this region versus this region?
Yes.
All of that is much less clear now that we have the internet, which is kind of the Wild West in terms of the law, because we haven't had time for these cases to bubble up.
Yeah, we live in the world of the Wikipedia. I mean, how good is it really, right?
So you may be using a mark in the state of Nebraska, but you also may have it on your website. So what does that mean? Are you using it nationwide then? And the answer, unfortunately, is we don't exactly know yet. We have some ideas, but we don't exactly know where that's going to land.
All right, now the both of you work with entrepreneurs. It's not that that's all we talk about on Wild Biz Weekly, but it is an important thing. We're here with business students here at Creighton, and some of them are interested in starting their own firms. It's a hot topic inside of Omaha in particular, and Nebraska in general. What advice would the both of you have from your vantage point, your perspective, for the entrepreneurs that you come across here in the Omaha area? You've got your legal background. Certainly you understand there's a digital focus, all these fast growth, high-tech firms. What do you see them doing wrong? Virgil, what's your take on that whole deal?
Well, I think it's as Andrew mentioned a second ago. Things have become more complicated.
Yeah.
Because of the internet and all of the ability to interface with people around the country and around the world.
Yeah, so it's all about who really owns what, and where does the tax apply or not, all that stuff.
And what we've tried to do is to sit down with the entrepreneur early on and talk through, find out what their products are, what they're intending to do, and then as a result of that, try and walk them through the issues, whether it's the licensing issues that I alluded to. In fact, Andrew and I sat down with a young man yesterday, and he has a number of issues regarding trade names, trademarks, and all of that. So you try and walk them through that process to make sure that they put their best foot forward when they really do have a product to take to market.
Okay. Andrew, as we kind of wrap up here, do you see the business plans and the branding that you work with and are exposed to, is it changing? Is it pretty much the same as it was 5 or 10 years ago? What advice do you have when somebody's got an idea, they've kind of begun putzing around with it, they're doing something with it, they think maybe they should be talking to a legal professional like you? What advice or suggestions do you have for those folks?
Well, I think it's certainly changing, and I guess to piggyback on what you just said, I think that some very good advice for young business people, including the fellow that we met with yesterday, is to recognize the value of intellectual property in your business. And with technology coming to the fore, we're seeing more and more of that. People are building their business around a particular technology. So those people don't necessarily need to hear that. But, you know, even with traditional businesses,
Yeah.
you know, factories, manufacturing, whatever, people are beginning to recognize the value of that intellectual property.
Of the abstract, intangible, and it might in fact be more important than the actual tangible
At times.
assets that they have.
At times, and we're seeing that accounted for, you know, as businesses are bought and sold. People are paying a lot more attention to these intellectual property, these intangible assets.
One of the things that we never thought about years ago, but as you use the electronic means that we have, you're gathering a lot of information.
Yes.
That probably a lot of us aren't all that aware of.
Yes.
And a lot of companies are making a real good business out of data mining.
Out of aggregating,
Aggregating
the
the
data and
information
then
that they've got.
Then they mine it. It's called the big data phenomenon.
Exactly.
Absolute. Fascinating. Well, gentlemen, I thank you so much for joining me this brief time. You've both got a repository of invaluable knowledge, and it's my pleasure to have both of you. From Erickson Cedarstrom, Virgil Johnson and Andy Collins, ladies and gentlemen, from Erickson Cedarstrom, thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.